have a lot of experience. So we have put together this webinar so that I can explain to you from our point of view what to expect, when to file, why you want to file, and how you want to file. And we have joining us in a moment, Zaira Yvette Padilla, who will be interpreting. Can you guys let me know in the chats if there's anybody here that only speaks Spanish? Habla español? Fernando, maybe you could ask if we could get a showing of how many people want this in Spanish. Zaira will be interpreting in Spanish, but we want to know exactly how much time to dedicate to the Spanish translation. So just while we're waiting for Zaira, a little bit of background. We started to prepare for parole in place in June when President Biden announced that for the purpose of keeping families together, the administration would introduce parole in place. And we've been watching social media and we've heard a lot of the comments from people about this process, you know, testing and questioning why is this a good process? Who needs it? You know, it's focused at spouses of US citizens, and we've seen comments. For example, one person said, well, I petitioned my husband and he was able to get a green card with no problem. Well, I'm assuming that that particular person who petitioned their spouse had married somebody who entered the country legally. So with the legal entry, a US citizen may petition a spouse, and the green card is allowed to be submitted inside the United States. We call this a 245A adjustment of status. But the problem that Biden was addressing is for the people who entered the country without permission. And we know that there at this point, more than 12 million people in the US undocumented. I don't know the exact numbers. I don't think anybody does at this point. And the majority of these people entered the country without inspection. So what Biden is doing for people who have been here for at least 10 years, he is fixing that factual detail to allow people to enter with inspection, but without leaving the country. So Fernando, can we move to the next slide? So our what is about what are you waiting for? When? It started yesterday. Why? Because we want you to adjust status inside the US and not be required to leave. How? Online. I'll go over all of these things in more detail, but I wanted to give you an overview and just a little description of everything that we're going to cover today. So let's go to the what. And for me is, what are you waiting for? Why wait? The number one question that people ask me in the first 5 minutes of every conversation about parole in place is, what about the elections? What's going to happen if there is a different president, a different administration elected in November? What will happen also if the famous judges, federal judges in Texas, enjoin or stop this process? And my answer is, that's why you should file or move forward right away, because this process will not take years. There are many immigration processes that take years and years. For example, if you were to go through this petition where you don't have a legal entry. If a US citizen petitions a spouse who did not enter legally, the current processing time is around 6 years if that person is from Mexico, if the applicant spouse is from Mexico, to be clear. The reason why that process takes such a long time is because the individual applicant who entered the US without permission must have a waiver. While the US citizen can apply for the visa and the visa will be approved, the next step is to apply for a waiver. And the reason why we can apply for that waiver as a next step is because of President Obama. President Obama allows people, began a process to allow people to apply for a waiver inside the US. And then once the waiver is approved inside the US, the applicant must go to an interview in their home country. And that's where things get scary and stressful, because nobody wants to leave the United States without certainty. And even though we might have a waiver approved, there is a possibility that a consular officer could deny the case. Well, immigration attorneys with experience know how to do background checks, vet the facts, and know when there's a risk for going to an interview. But the stress remains when anytime anybody leaves the country who has been here for 20 years without permission. It's very stressful to think about going to a final interview abroad in Mexico, Guatemala, Vietnam, it doesn't matter where. So this process will allow the families to stay in the US, to do the entire process in the US. And that first step, the parole in place, only takes probably, we think, 4 to 6 months. So that would all happen before there would be an administration change. So we're advocating for everybody to move forward now. And it looks like it's working, because last night the parole in place system crashed. Well, it's back up today. Everything's working fine, but there were a flood of applications last night, which is a very good sign. So the parole in place is designed to allow certain non-citizen spouses and stepchildren of US citizens to get a temporary parole. The temporary parole is status, it's the actual status for 3 years that allows the applicant who's been granted to get work authorization. And it aims to keep people together, to prevent any processing out of the country, and to also build a bridge to allow the spouse to have work authorization and complete the process inside the United States. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. And if you guys have any questions, I'm going to look at the chat now. Is there anybody here who needs the presentation in Spanish? All right, when? The application process began yesterday. And you guys can't see the balloons behind me, but today's my birthday, so I consider this to be my birthday present. We were able to file our first applications yesterday. They went very, very well. Thank you. So the fact that the USCIS opened yesterday and it's moving forward, and so far there's no challenges from the people who don't like immigration. I don't know how to put it best. No challenges so far. And then, so far things are looking hopeful for the elections. So everybody's moving forward and filing. The parole in place must be filed online. And the later applications after the parole in place is approved are going to be filed differently with service centers. But the parole in place itself is filed online, and it's filed on the form I-131F. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Why hiring an immigration attorney? I could spend years on this topic. Immigration attorneys are trained, of course, in the law. Seasoned immigration attorneys have filed hundreds and sometimes, like in my case, thousands of cases. And the devil is always in the detail. The attorney can come up with a personalized strategy for your case. For example, there are some people that I've been talking to who have maybe a removal order in court or might have been apprehended at the border. We, as attorneys, know how to handle these situations. Those type of circumstances do not make you ineligible for this case, but it does mean we have to file in certain ways and with certain types of evidence. So an immigration attorney must explain that to you, and that maximizes your chances for approval and avoids costly mistakes and delays. Plus, as an attorney, me and my staff are with you through the entire process, answering questions that come up, dealing with any changes that might happen. And, you know, things happen, it's life changes. So that's why we need an attorney. And I don't know if Zyra's been able to log in yet, but one of the things that we've dealt with, you know, in the past 20 years are the people who have chosen to go to a notario or sometimes a family member and file without that kind of advice. And the case can get very messed up and sometimes permanently damaged. And that's the most important thing to prevent by using an attorney's service. Attorneys are regulated. We have to go to school. We have to take a bar. We have to be part of a state bar. If we mess up a case, we're disciplined, or we have insurance, we're required to fix it. So that's why you use an immigration attorney. Okay. So far, do we have any questions? Anybody want me to answer anything about that? An immigration attorney, of course, is an individual who's been in law school, who's passed a bar in the US. An attorney who is admitted to the highest court of a state can practice immigration in any state. Now, we're in California, so I can practice immigration law in any state in the United States. But if I wanted to practice divorce, I couldn't because I'm licensed in Tennessee. But as an immigration attorney, I can practice in any state. Okay, so any questions about the why? How? The requirements for the parole in place, we call it Biden parole in place, but we're also saying it called Keeping Families Together parole, I-130F, I-131F. The first most important requirement is that you are the spouse of a U.S. citizen or the stepchild of a U.S. citizen as of June 17th, 2024. And we have had 1 or 2 cases where people were married 1 day after, 2 days after. And, you know, while that's like, oh, we wish, you know, they would have known, there was no way to know. But it's an absolute requirement. There's no flexibility. Few days after, we can't do it. You have to be married as of June 17, 2014. There are some rules that allow for widowed people who were married to a U.S. citizen who might have passed away. We can file widow cases. For stepchildren, a stepchildren is defined as a child who was under the age of 18 when the step parent married the biological parent. So the valid marriage of the U.S. citizen has to be as of June 17, 2024. There can be no disqualifying criminal history, and the individual applying cannot be an enforcement priority under the immigration memos that are in place today. And the immigration memos that are in place today basically state that somebody who is a terrorist or serious crimes such as murder, there are some crimes that might be misdemeanors under immigration law. They're still going to make you ineligible, and that's why you need to talk to an immigration attorney to find out if you have a crime, if it will make you ineligible. Many don't, so it's very important to talk to an attorney if you have a crime. We've also had and talked to, and so a lot of these people are my clients, people who are in removal proceedings or people who have been deported or who have expedited removal orders. If an individual is in removal proceedings or has been ordered removed but has not left, we call that an executed removal order. That individual may be eligible for parole in place. In that situation, the USCIS will look for documents that will prove positive equities. That's a nice fancy word to say, things that make that person worth staying in the country. Like if an individual has been doing really well in school or has a really good job where they've proven that they're valuable to the employer, or taking care of stepchildren, going back to that point. Positive equities are any proof about a person that they're a good person. So if we can provide positive equities, the government will consider the positive equities in granting parole in place to people who are in removal or who have removal orders. Now, if the removal order was executed, meaning the individual was actually taken out of the country, then they are not eligible for parole in place. Are there any questions? Okay, I have one. My I-130 was approved, but I have been placed in removal proceedings by the court. Okay, so California chapter, yes, you should be able to move forward. This is exactly the type of case that we would show positive equities, like your role in the community, your role as a parent, your role in the church, maybe as a coach for sports. I'm just giving you examples of things, but being a good member of society and showing those positive equities will allow you to move forward. So yes, you can move forward. And then once you have the parole in place, then we can end your court case. Are there any other questions? That was a great question. Okay, documentation needed. We need your proof of identity. Sometimes we have people who are in DACA, so you have like a work authorization card, or maybe you have work authorization through another process. We can submit that as proof of ID, or your state driver's license, or your passport. Then evidence of the spouse or step-parent citizenship. That can be a birth certificate and an ID, or passport. Proof of relationship. That would be a marriage license. This text says marriage certificate, but specifically it's a marriage license in California. Birth certificates would be children that have been, result of the marriage, so to speak. Bona fides of the marriage can be proof that the couple lived together, share bank accounts, file taxes together, photos of the couple together at holiday events. We at the office help you pull together that type of evidence because there's so much that can be presented to prove that a marriage is valid. The evidence of continuous physical presence is the more voluminous, so the most of the documents are evidence of a continuous physical presence. I like to think that there should be about 40 documents because we are approving 10 years of physical presence from June 17th, 2014 till present. So 4 documents per year over a 10-year period Some years you don't need 4 documents. If we have income tax returns for 10 years, then we probably don't need a lot of other corroborating documents. But if we don't have income tax returns for those 10 years or any of those years, the years that we don't have that kind of proof, we need probably 4 documents, maybe one from the spring, the summer, or the fall or winter of that year to show that the applicant was in the US during the entire year. The current guidance that we have attended seminars and found out over since yesterday is stating that we just don't want any large gaps of time. That would mean that the USCIS probably doesn't want to see a 2-year gap. The seasonal evidence that I'm talking about is what the standard was for DACA. So we're hoping that this evidentiary requirement will not be as strict as DACA. So Yarth, you're asking college transcript for that year of winter fall. Oh, that would be perfect. That would cover the whole year. If the son's birth certificate has an error and the process it takes to fix it will take it longer than the parole in place, you could send it. It depends on the error. Some errors are not material and would not be problematic. I would have to know specifically what the type of error is. Like if your son's birth certificate has your name and the spouse's name, then it probably would be okay. But you could, if it were to be standalone, oh, your birthplace is wrong. We can provide proof that the birthplace is not correct and explain it to the service. And if they want the birth certificate fixed, then typically the USCIS will send us a request for evidence and give us 87 days or 30 days to reply, if they felt that that was something they wanted fixed. So for something like that, I would not delay to wait for that fix. I would go ahead and submit your I-131F and at the same time request that the birth certificate be fixed. And if the government does want the birth certificate fixed, then you'll have it by the time the request for evidence comes in. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat and I'll clarify that. Okay. So the evidence of continuous physical presence, like I said, I don't think they want more than 40 documents, but they are allowing for us to upload a lot of documentation, more than we expected. Maybe they're allowing us to submit more evidence because everything is online, and normally these cases are covered by the Reduction of Paper Act, and they're trying to limit the number of paper, but they're allowing us to upload volumes of documents. For school records, do they need to be official? Yes, they need to be official because they want them to be authenticated. They want to be sure that the educational institution issued them. And when I say authenticate, that means they want to make sure they came from the school and that you didn't, create one, in Adobe. But so we would want an official seal or some kind of authenticating seal or mark on the document to show that it did come from the school. It doesn't have to be the original, obviously, because everything's being uploaded into by a PDF into the I-131F account online. Does anybody have any more questions about the documents before we move on? And this is, go ahead.
I just got in the line, Hadley. This is Rodolfo. I pretty much didn't hear, but the documentation needed is this one's on the phone. Proof of identity.
Proof of identity. Evidence
of
right.
Proof of relationship, marriage certificate.
Yes.
Evidence of continuous physical presence.
Yes, so we
And
have to prove that you've been in the US since June 17th, 2014.
okay. So you're saying that everything's gonna be online, right?
Yes, everything will be uploaded. So
Okay.
when you submit the evidence, you would scan it and it will turn into a PDF-like document and be uploaded or attached into the system.
So there's no need for for us to go to your office and do no paperwork?
It depends. Okay, well, if you're going to hire us, which we recommend because of, this is all being recorded, Rodolfo, so we can send it to you. Okay?
Yeah,
So you can watch
okay,
everything again. Or you
okay,
could, and for anybody who wants to just talk to me about this, we do our consultations free. Okay,
okay,
we're doing this webinar for the community, so everybody in the community can have access to this information and start
yes,
planning.
okay.
Okay? Um, but I'm sorry, I forgot what your question is. But we're talking through what documentations you need to prove that you've been in the US since June 17th of 2014. And one thing I recommended was IRS tax returns, rental agreements. This is something that we commonly submitted for physical presence, not only in DACA cases, but also in court. So people do have receipts of their payments they made monthly. Those are excellent proof of physical presence. A lease would be an excellent proof of physical presence. Some people want to submit bank account statements. That's excellent proof of physical presence, but I personally don't want to give the government, my spending habits. And if there's nothing to worry about and everything's, like, who cares that you spent, $150 on groceries and, that those type of expenditures, and you don't care that the government sees it, then fine. Joint bank accounts are very good proof, or just individual bank accounts, because to have a bank account, you have to be in the US in general. And it shows, spending in the US. So they're very good proof. Okay. So again, we need documents to prove each from June 17th, 2014 to present that you've been in the US. And I think this is easier than it has been with DACA, or when we've had to do this in court. We need to do this in court a lot because of the electronic systems that are in place for almost every single thing in our lives now. I mean, we pay our utility bills online, we buy our groceries online, we order clothes, we do our banking, very often pay our mortgage or our lease online. So any kind of an online account, there are a lot of cell phones that are paid for online. If your name is anywhere on a cell phone bill, that's proof. Does anybody have any more questions about the evidence of continuous physical presence? We can spend time on that because this is the most important part of this application. Okay, we can move forward. How to apply. So the USCIS is making this an online process only. And I've done a lot of podcasts. We'll put the name of the podcast here in the chat so you guys can watch the podcast. We talk about parole in place, I-131F, like every other day. We also talk about all other immigration processes and give information about how to apply for different things like U visas, asylum, business-based visas. And one thing that I've been talking about on the podcast is that we've had parole in place since Obama put parole in place for military spouses as a relief in 2013. But the military parole in place allowed us to file with the local field office. So if we're here in Riverside, California, so we've been filing everything directly to the San Bernardino field office. And then when everything is reviewed and approved, our client would go to the San Bernardino field office and go through what we call the inspection. The whole process is to show that there was an inspection, that the individual non-immigrant is now going to be inspected and admitted into the US legally. Well, yesterday, the USCIS clarified to us that you do not have to go through that process. We don't expect that you will have to go through an inspection with an officer. We believe by what we've been trained yesterday, that the inspection document will be sent to you by mail, that you will get an I-94 document. I'm going to type that into the chat so you guys will see it and start to become familiar with it. I-94. This is an admission record. This admission record, I-94, will state that you will be approved as a parolee for a period of 3 years. So when you receive that I-94 document, you will have been granted the parole in place. So you're going to complete the form I-131F online, upload all necessary evidence, pay the fee. The fee is $580. You can pay the fee with a credit card or a debit card and then submit. If the government has any questions or wants to correspond with you, you will receive a text or email with that correspondence. You can also check your account every day because you're now required to create your own individual account with the USCIS website. And those accounts are great because once you create that account, the USCIS is able to track any future petitions and connect them with that account. So all of your cases will go into your account, and you can select push notifications and get text messages or emails or both to let you know every time an action is taken on your case, which is wonderful because you know immediately, for example, if the USCIS is going to send you a request for more evidence. So you may not get the request for evidence right away. It might come by mail or it might come by email. And that request for evidence might say, for example, we've received evidence that you have lived in the US for the years 2016 through 2024, but we have insufficient evidence for 2014 and 2015. Please provide additional evidence to prove that you were in the US during the years 2014 and 2015. And then it'll give you a deadline. Usually it's 87 days or 30 days. They will give you one of those deadlines to submit the new evidence. The USCIS might send you a notice of intent to deny. If the USCIS thinks you have not presented enough evidence to prove that you're eligible for this relief, the USCIS will send you a notice of intent to deny. We call it a NOID. And they will give you 30 days to correct the problem, or they will deny your case. Or the USCIS will send you a grant. They send you the grant, then you will get that document, the I-94, and it will say that you are paroled into the US for a period of 3 years. And then you are immediately able to apply for work authorization through the form I-765 based on your parole status. At that point, you will also be considered an arriving alien. And if you have a US citizen spouse, which of course you have, because that was the reason why you're able to apply for this. And if you're able to adjust, then at that point, you're able to file an adjustment of status and have a green card. And in my experience with these processes, if the USCIS does not suffer a long delay due to bottlenecks and filings, meaning, we 550,000 people, if they apply all this week, that might create a bottleneck and it might cause delays. So I would guess that these are the following processing times. If there are no serious bottlenecks, you should get your I-94 from 4 to 6 months after filing. And then you can file your work authorization, and you should get your work authorization in about 3 months. So that means you would have, if you were to start today, that means you could have your work authorization around spring of 2025. And then if you file your adjustment of status, you could have your green card around this time next year, or maybe winter of 2025. So this makes the process exponentially faster, because right now a US citizen spouse without a legal entry must go out of the country, file a waiver, file an I-130, not in that order, I went in reverse. And that case takes around 5 years if you're from Mexico because of the delays. This case should take 1.5 years. This case does not require you to leave the country. Now, many people already have legal entries and don't need this. If somebody already has a legal entry and a US citizen spouse, then they do not need this unless they have a reason why they cannot adjust status. Then they could use this process to get work authorization for 3 years. We can skip to the next slide. So we do have free initial consultations, comprehensive case evaluations. We prepare all the documents. We review all the submissions. We maintain the case. We call it monitoring. And then we represent people in complex cases. And we follow all of the developments of keeping families together as it unfolds. I mean, this has been available now for a day. We filed our first case yesterday when it opened on August 19th. One question that's been asked and answered is, what happens if I'm not allowed to adjust because maybe I have a permanent bar or another issue? Will I be able to keep my parolee status after 3 years? And the USCIS said yesterday that they don't expect to extend it beyond 3 years, but who knows what will change over the next 3 years. I think that anybody who has a US citizen spouse and can prove that they've been in the US for 10 years should definitely move forward and file this, because there are a lot of advantages to being an arriving alien. One of them is, for example, if you have a legal entry and for any reason, you're caught in something like a ICE roadblock, they cannot remove you from the US if you're an arriving alien. You have to be given an opportunity to see an immigration judge. So there's no immediate overnight removals from the US if somebody has a legal entry. Okay, I have a question. Do we submit the application, the document ourselves, or will the office do that on our behalf? If you have hired us to file this application, we do everything. We have a white glove service. We do consider this teamwork because
If you have
you
your
got,
card, please scan it now. Scan item
sorry, there's somebody that needs to go on mute.
5.
Can we
If you
mute?
have your club card, please scan it now.
Okay, so the office, if we represent you, we will be submitting everything for you. We will be preparing all of the physical presence documents with you. You're more than welcome to come into the office, and like yesterday, I had a gentleman come in with 10 files, one for each year, and probably in each file there were 100 documents. And we sort through them with you. and figure out which documents are gonna work the best. And then we prepare the application and submit for you. When we submit, and when our office is submitting the case for you, there is a stage of the application where you will open your email and open a link that will ask you to set your username and password. And then once you have your username and password, then we can submit, and this case becomes part of your account and our account with the USCIS, so that we can both go into the USCIS online accounts and check status of your case. Okay, so we're here to help. Please, what are your questions? How can I make things clearer to you? I've given consultations on this probably 75 times since it was announced, and I say it a little bit differently every time. And I might not have covered individual circumstances that you guys might want me to cover. Please ask. Everybody learns from questions.
Hadley,
Yes.
what would happen if for some reason they were to stop this law?
Okay, so this is the #1 question. What happens if there's a change of administration, not the Biden administration, but if Trump were to win, or if the, I'm trying to be politically safe here, but if the right-wing judges were to enjoin it, I have seen no activity about anybody trying to enjoin this process. And I think it's because it's election time and nobody wants to be the bad guy, okay?
Yeah, right.
So secondly, if President Trump were to win, then more than likely he would end the process, but he wouldn't end it until January. So that's one of the reasons why we are promoting, advocating, begging you to file it now, because we have it now. If you file it, they have to finish the processing.
Okay, so
Okay, and the part that's statutory is the actual adjustment of status. So if President Trump were to win, he could not end the adjustment of status. He could only end the PIP. So as long as you have the PIP approved, we can still move on to the later stages of adjusting status. All of the adjustment of status laws were enacted by Congress, and Trump has no control over that.
okay,
The
all right.
parole in place was something Biden put out there. Please move forward with it.
Okay.
I was hoping that Zyra was here, but I can't tell you how many times we had to tell people who were DACA eligible that it was not available anymore. And
Yes.
you know, woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? We wish you would have gone forward with DACA when it was available.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so I have a question. Your office currently represents me. Should I call and set up an appointment? We've been contacting, we've contacted about 50 people that we have. We might have tried to contact you already. If we haven't contacted you, will you please contact us?
Hadley,
Call Lucy at the front desk, and we will set up an appointment tomorrow.
okay, Hadley, Angelica was supposed to email me the I guess she's the one in charge of my case, and she said that she called me already, but she was gonna send me an email regarding the requirements through email, but I never received anything.
Okay, I don't know who Angelica is. We don't have an Angelica.
Oh, I don't know, Angelica.
Let me get you.
Angelica, is it Angelica? I'm not sure her name. She spoke to my wife, Rosa Cisneros.
Okay, let me find out who it was. I'm gonna write down your name. Okay?
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Are there any other questions?
No, that's it. I just, cause she was supposed to send, that's about it. Cause, we wanted to start the process already.
Okay, well, if I represent you guys, if any of you, and you have not heard from us, please call us
Okay, yeah, all right, I'll call you.
immediately.
All right,
Um,
sounds good.
Know that it's in the chat, all of our contact information, but we'll put it up again.
Okay,
Or you can email me. We have just now shared some barcodes for you to share our Facebook group or listen to our podcast.
okay,
Okay, everybody, I hope this was helpful. We're gonna do them hopefully every week as we get through the first week of filing, and we always learn a lot by processing and receiving responses from the USCIS, and we will share all of that with you.
okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Fernando, do we have any other slides that you want to show? Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. And have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. All right, next time we'll do it in Spanish, okay?
Okay,
So Fernando, how can people get a copy of this PowerPoint?
So I have everyone's email, so I can go ahead and send it out after this.
Awesome. All right.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.